بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه يكافئ مزيدا يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي بجلال وجهك العظيم سلطانك سبحانك لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك فلك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا رضيت ولك الحمد بعد الرضا اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في كل وقت وحين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد حتى ترث الأرض ومن عليها أنت خير وارثين نويت تعلم التعليم وتذكر التذكير ونفع انتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على تمسك بكتاب الله وبسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. In the continuation of our reading of the work of Imam al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala Abu Isa Shama'il al-Muhammadiyya وبه قال حدثنا حميد بن مسعد البصري حدثنا عبد الوهاب الثقفي عن حميد عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله تعالى عنه قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ربعة ليس بطويل ولا بالقصير حسن الجسم وكان شعره ليس بجعد ولا سبت أسمر اللون إذا مشى يتكفى. So the tradition is the second tradition, which is related to authority once again of Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, the very khadim, the servant of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was of medium stature, neither exceedingly tall nor short. He had a handsome physique. His blessed hair was neither extremely curly nor straight. His complexion was fair with some redness. When he would walk swiftly with vigor and lean forward slightly, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And so here in the tradition of Sayyidina Anas, rahimahullah ta'ala, which is the second of traditions, we said the first tradition, the Imam al-Tirmidhi brings, the tradition is found also inside of Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim. It also negates, and in terms of attributes from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in terms of definition, we have two options at hand. We have an option in order to affirm, and we have an option and also to negate. The Imams rahimahullah ta'ala often use the word jami' mani', and jami' and the word who or what is it, mani' who or what isn't it, jami' mani'. And so Imam Anas rahimahullah ta'ala, first and foremost, it's mani'. He's negating from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we said that's a recognition of the difficulty, quote unquote, of ever bringing definition to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because for definition it requires irfan, it requires knowledge, and the Prophet sallallahu knowledge of the Rasul sallallahu wasallam that always encompasses. And the hukm ala shay farun an tasawwurihi, to make a judgment upon something, it is but a tributary of complete conceptualization. And who has complete conceptualization of the Prophet sallallahu wasallam except Allah ta'ala? As the Prophet sallallahu wasallam said, la ya'rifuni illa Allah, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows me. And in that the divine subhanahu wa ta'ala never brought definition to the Prophet sallallahu wasallam, then likewise also everyone has to recognize, as Sayyidina Uwais al-Qarni rahimahullah ta'ala said in relation to Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab with Sahih al-Bukhari, the Prophet sallallahu wasallam said, ilm, is knowledge. And likewise in relation to Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib karamallahu wajhu hakim, where the Prophet sallallahu wasallam said, Bab ana madinatul ilm wa aliyun babuha, I'm the city of knowledge and Ali is the gateway to it. Both of those of those realities of knowledge, Sayyidina Uwais al-Qarni rahimahullah ta'ala addressing them, said the only knowledge you have of the Prophet sallallahu wasallam is the knowledge of his shadow. That's all the knowledge you have of the Rasul sallallahu wasallam. And the Rasul sallallahu wasallam has no shadow. Okay? And if that's what knowledge, quote unquote, has of the Prophet sallallahu wasallam, then what about those doing adhalika, those who are less than that in regard? And so in the first tradition, saying Anas rahimahullah ta'ala, we get that understanding. Okay, it's just the power of negation, that the Rasul sallallahu isn't and he isn't. The Rasul sallallahu isn't and he isn't. The Rasul sallallahu isn't and he isn't. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second tradition here, Imam al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala brings, it's more so on the most part going to be affirmative for the Prophet sallallahu wasallam. What then do we know about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam? So qala kana Rasulullah sallallahu wasallam rab'atan. And so first, he wants to look at the height of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so he uses it with rab'atan. Again, the word rab'atan, as we said, with sudus and likewise, and other than that, it relates to what you call adru dira'a, and an arm's length. Okay, an arm's length, on they say the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala upon the most precise dabat, and precision of what we call an arm's length from the age of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's the age of the Rasul sallallahu that is important. That's what the fuqaha are going to call mi'yar al-shara'. Mi'yar al-shara' is always in terms of measurement to ensure that they accord with the measurements used in the age of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so when we look at an arm's length in the age of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we're looking at 48 centimeters. And so here, rab'atan or arba' 4, here Sayyidina Anas rahimahullah ta'ala is saying that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam rab'atan, and it's like 4 arms length in terms of height, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Although, as we understand, when we bring all the traditions together, the tradition of Sayyidina Hind, tradition of Sayyidina Ali, tradition of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhum, then this is an approximation. It's not an exact measurement of the height of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, rather than what in the hadith of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu warda, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam aqrab ila tul atwal min al-marbu', that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is taller than the marbu', he's taller than Rabi' sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We say in terms of conversion for us, in the key sort of figure is 6'3". So the Rasul is taller than 6'3" in height. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Kana Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam rab'atan. So that's the affirmative. But then he brings the negation. Laysa bil tawil wa la bil qasir. And the Prophet sallallahu is neither tall nor short. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And when we by tall here, extremely tall. As in his prior tradition, and he laysa bil tawil al ba'in. He's not exceedingly tall. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wa la bil qasir. Nor is the Prophet sallallahu ever to be considered small, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, upon any quote unquote standard of measurement. And hasan al-jism, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and a body beautiful, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. In the tradition, you're looking at the form of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, remember his perfection, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and this is the issue of Shama'il. It's not just a perfection of spirit, but it's also perfection of form. Qalb wal qalib. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, we quoted al-Busayri rahimahullah ta'ala, فَهُوَ الَّذِي تَمَّ مَعْنَاهُ وَصُورَتُهُ. As the one who completed his ma'na, his khuluq, his meanings, his inner reality. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, complete, perfect. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, wa surah, outward manifestation, the khalq, the physical form of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, perfect. Yani كَأَنُّ خَلْقَ الْأَوَّل. How can tradition? It's as if that was original creation. That was the first creation that was created at the hands of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu wa ta'ala ta'azamatu, the form of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Hasan al-Jism, as in a tradition of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas rahimahullah ta'ala, ma arsala Allahu nabiyyan qat illa hasan al-wajh wa hasan al-sawt. Allah ta'ala has never sent a prophet ever. Say that it's hasan al-wajh. Hasan al-wajh here means he's of extreme beauty of the face. But wedge also for Lughat al-Arab is also of countenance, his being, his form. Yani perfect, beautiful in terms of face, perfect, beautiful in terms of form, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. As you see with the likes of Sayyidina Bara, as you see with the likes of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu wa others, ma ra'aytu qablahu wa la ba'dahu mithlahu ahsana minhu. I've never seen anyone before or after him the like of him. Never seen anybody before or after him more beautiful than him, ever. And that doesn't rest upon the eyes of Sayyidina Ali, radiallahu anhu warda. Nor does it rest upon the eyes of Sayyidina Bara, radiallahu ta'ala anhu warda. Period. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not created the like of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam in every regard. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And that's why beauty measured in accordance to that standard. The standard of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, of the Imams rahimahullah ta'ala. In the same way we say that Shama'il is a science that enables one to see. But it's also the science that defines beauty, likewise. It defines beauty. Because that is the Prophet ﷺ from every perspective, ﷺ, and thereby everybody's measured accordingly. That's why you find that this tradition, of saying Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali, radiallahu ta'ala anhu warda. Man huwa? Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali, the most beautiful man after the Messenger of God. But look, where's the standard? The Messenger of God. The most beautiful man after the Messenger of God, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali, radiallahu anhu warda. Likewise also Sayyidina Dihya al-Kalbi, rahimahullah ta'ala. Man Dihya, the most beautiful man after the Messenger of God, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so the Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, the standard of Rasul. But then how is Dihya or how is Jarir, both, and how can they be the most beautiful man after the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? It's all in that word, Hasan al-Wajh. But the Rasul ma arsalallahu nabiyyan qat illa Hasan al-Wujuh, illa Hasan al-Wajh, illa Hasan al-Sawt, wa kadhalika nabiyyukum. Hakada Abdullah bin Abbas said, likewise your prophet. Wedge, the face. And hakada they say whom, saying the Dihya. The Dihya is the most beautiful man after the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, facially. Facially, when you see the face of saying the Dihya, radiallahu anhu warda, they would say in the tradition, Hakada ibn Hajar, radiallahu anhu warda, inside of his Isaba, the Bible with the companions, radiallahu anhu warda, he said, women in a society of modesty, Medina society of modesty, and women, tudra bihin al-mathal, yani khalas, and yani the proverbial in terms of modesty, and Medina to Munawwara, the women there, the most proverbial. لا يمنعهن الحياء. Like in Hadith al-Bukhari of Sayyidina Aisha of the women of Medina, they don't allow their extreme modesty, their haya. Sayyidina Aisha would say inside of Sahih al-Bukhari. But in the tradition, in the biography of Sayyidina Dihya, radiallahu anhu wardahum, those women who the haya of the Rasul is struck in accordance with, in Sahih al-Bukhari, that the Prophet is more modest than a woman who's never been touched by a man. Look, the parallel that they bring inside of Sahih al-Bukhari, those women who'd never been touched by men in the modern society of Medina to Munawwara, that when saying a Dihya would come through Medina, then women would come out of their houses just to gaze upon Dihya. How can the bargain of Dihya? And he would maghnatis, that the power of attraction, he would drag them from their houses so they could gaze at the face of Dihya al-Kalbi radiallahu anhu warda. That, remember, that is the form, the most off form of Jibreel, of Gabriel. When Gabriel descends from the heavens, when he takes the form of man, the most off form of Gabriel is the form of saying Dihya al-Kalbi. Why? Due to the profundity of beauty of Dihya. What's Dihya with the Nabi? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You go further with the prophets. What are the prophets with the Nabi? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Remember, Allah has never sent a prophet, say that they're beautiful in form, beautiful facially. What are the prophets with the Nabi? What is often said the most beautiful of all the prophets? Say, no, Yusuf. As in Sahih Muslim, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ra'aytu Yusuf. I saw Yusuf. فَإِذَا قَدْ أُوتِيَ شَطْرُ الْحُسْنِ. And the Rasul Hakada Yumathil is given an example of anyone who gazes upon Yusuf. Hakada, that's in the language, فَإِذَا, that they're called Fujai'i in the Arabic language. It takes you by surprise when you gaze upon Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. أُوتِيَ شَطْرُ الْحُسْنِ. Half of beauty. But where is the full beauty? The full beauty lies with the full moon, the Badr, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And that's beautifully captured by Sayyidina Aisha, radiallahu anha, wardaha suhaybatu Zulaykha, law ra'aynahu al-afarna al-qata' al-fuadi ala al-aydi. That those women who surrounded Zulaykha, Yusuf alayhi salam, the Imrat al-Aziz, had they seen the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they would have whipped out their hearts, not slit their wrists, ripped out their hearts had they seen the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. That's facially. Saying whom Jarir ibn Abdul al-Bajali, rahimahullah ta'ala, that they say that in physique. That's why you want to hasan al-jism now. Here, in his physique, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Okay. And of the beauties of the Sahaba and the generosity of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, just as the Rasul would allow them to see his face, he would also, but they couldn't, but he would also allow them to see his body, isn't it? How often does the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam go just with lungi, with izar, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, with his entire upper torso, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, on display as an object of worship, by gazing at the form of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, anta fil ibadah. Sure, you're in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kayf, when the Rasul tells us sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, by gazing at, mashallah, are your parents, you're in worship. Gazing at the Kaaba, you're in worship. Gazing at the Mus'haf, you're in worship. What about gazing at Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam? Arqa anwa' al-ibadah, that they are the most loftiest forms of worship. It's just to gaze at the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That's why you'll pass into Jannah. Hakada, you'll see Yawm al-Qiyamah. Angel, have you seen the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Yeah, you gotta pass. Have you seen the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Yeah, you gotta pass. Have you seen the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Yeah, you gotta pass. Hakada, that's the pass into Jannah. Gazing at the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the realization of whom you're gazing upon. And the beauty sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam by definition. Hakada, shuf kayf, he's saying Jarir ibn Abdul al-Bajali, rahimahullah ta'ala, then he becomes Muslim 52 days prior to the death of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I remember the Rasul in difficulty now through sickness. Saying Jarir, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that never did the Prophet see me save that he smiled. And as we know by traditions, Imam al-Tirmidhi will bring up the chapter of the smile of the Prophet ﷺ. Whenever the Rasul is smiling, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likewise happy. Allah ta'ala happy. And so every time the Rasul gazed upon Sayyidina Jarir, Ashuf Kayf, look of the divine Jalla Jalala wa ta'ala message. What's the secret of the Rasul gazing upon Jarir? We find that in the age of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu warda. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu warda, he would walk as the caliph, the khilafat, he would summon Sayyidina Jarir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu warda. And so Jarir, mashallah, ta'ala 10, come to the presence of Umar ibn al-Khattab. Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab would say to Jarir, Ya Jarir, Jarrid, Jarrid. Jarrid means take off your clothes. So Sayyidina Jarir radiallahu anhu warda, hakada, Jarrid, he would take off his clothes in tradition, فَأَلْقَى ثَوْبُهُ عَلَى سَوْءَتِهِ. That he would take his thobe, he would take it off, but he'd make sure that his awrah was covered. So he's just now revealing upper torso. The Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, rahimahullah ta'ala. And so Sayyidina Umar anhu then with a smile. The smiles are saying Jarir. And he said, I smile at the one the Rasul smiles at. That's the one, I'm smiling at the one who the Rasul smiles at. Look at the Sahaba there. It's like Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, rahimahullah ta'ala, Umar kissing the black stone. You're doing that kissy because I saw the Rasul say some kissy. And which one of us, when we get to the black stone, that's one of the reasons why we don't even get there. After the because the niyyah غير صالحة غير راضية للرب it's not that which proclaims the pleasure of the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. You go to that black stone because he went there. So you make tawaf around the Kaaba because he made tawaf around the Kaaba. You stand at the maqam of Ibrahim because he stood at the maqam of Ibrahim. There between Safa and Marwa because the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam bayna Safa and Marwa. But likewise, Umar ibn Khattab, sure, he said, like, well, what about children? Umar ibn Khattab, I don't marry women for the love of women. I just marry women so the Rasul boasts about me yawm al-qiyamah. I could have shown Sayyidina Umar, radiallahu anhu warda. 30 women, how many children? Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu warda married. But once the Rasul would boast about his reality yawm al-qiyamah. Now you see, even such as a smile. I smile at the one the messenger of God smiled. Why is the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam smiling at Sayyidina Jarir? The perfection of his form. The beauty of the form of Sayyidina Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajri, the most beautiful man in form and jism, after the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam, then what then about the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in terms of hasan al-jism? وَكَانَ شَعْرُهُ لَيْسَ بِجَعَدٍ. Okay, here it mentions that the hair of the Rasul sallallahu was not ja'ad. And the ja'ad is curly hair. But we understand that the Rasul, we've seen the hadith in Ali, karamallahu wajhu, that the hair of the Rasul is ja'ad. He does have curly hair, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. So by the tradition of Sayyidina Anas, rahimahullah ta'ala, is what you call an ellipse, i.e. the sifa. The attribute is missing as in the previous tradition. Laysa bi ja'd al-qatat. His hair is not extremely curly. He doesn't have tightly curled hair, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. But he most certainly has curly hair, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There's not none who negate the curliness of the hair of the Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wa sahbihi wasallam. Laysa bi ja'din, yani qatat. ولا بالسبت. He's not having extremely curly hair, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Nor does he have straight or long hair, as discussed yesterday. Asmar alone, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. His complexion was fair, with some redness, fair with some redness. As we said, the translation there, fair, that they're the best way to translate the complexion of the Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ordinarily, when the term that is being used is abyad. The term of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 15 different companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam have attributed bayad, that term bayad in the Arabic language, to the complexion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We said what is problematic, especially in terms of quote unquote the racial hegemony that we see inside of modern culture, that to apply or to attribute the term white to the Prophet ﷺ, that is as gross as it comes. Not that whiteness is gross, but the attribution of that to the Prophet ﷺ is gross. Why? Because that's not what he was, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, in terms of skin complexion. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, cut. And so whenever we have traditions that use the word, which is overwhelming traditions of the Prophet ﷺ, even Anas himself, and this is Anas who's describing the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and saying Anas is going to make two attributions to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first one you got here, that's the first one Tirmidhi brings, that the Rasul asmar Yeah, and if we were to translate that term, quote unquote, into sort of racial culture, asmar, black. That's what asmar means. That's why people are going to, what that asmar? This tradition, what does asmar mean? Yeah, and because it's a tradition that is very clear, crystal clear. In Arabic language, it's more crystal clear than abyad. One of the great imams, the imam of the Sulam, radiallahu anhu, Imam al-Akhdari, of the great imams of what? Of Mantiq and of Maliki jurisprudence, radiallahu anhu, warda. One of the most famous and most important books in Islamic logic. And logic now, Mantiq, the workings of the mind, Mantiq, also, yani khalas, articulation, Mantiq, nataq, radiallahu anhu, warda. Okay, they tie it together. And so words are definitive in how the minds work. And one of the things that in the beginning of his Sulam, al-Akhdari, rahimahullah ta'ala, shows us, he wants to show us words that are crystal clear. When you use them, nobody debates what that word means. But words that are what he calls mushtarak, words that they have multiple different significations. Okay? Imam al-Akhdari, rahimahullah ta'ala, to strike an example of a word that you could only know the meaning given the context is the word abyad. That word at discussion here. That's the word he gives in the beginning of the Sulam, radiallahu anhu warda. So the word abyad, we can only know inside of context. We'll give you an example. Where's an example of the great imams of the religion, radiallahu anhu wardahu, who's saying Mu'adh bin Jabal. So Mu'adh bin Jabal, imam of the Ansar, radiallahu ta'ala anhu warda, the one who the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam called the most knowledgeable man after the prophets. Saying Mu'adh bin Jabal, radiallahu anhu warda. Saying Mu'adh, inside of his what? Inside of his biographies, we're going to describe, like with the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam here, let's describe the context of his hair, the texture of his hair. Let's describe his skin color. So the texture of the hair of Sayyidina Mu'adh, Hakad ibn Hajar, in his Isaba, his hair is Ja'ad al-Qatat. Ja'ad al-Qatat, what's negated from the Rasul, Ja'ad al-Qatat. An extremely tightly curled hair, Afro sub-Saharan hair, Ja'ad al-Qatat. That's how his hair is. Then, what about his skin complexion? Abyad. What are you going to say there? Haven't got it? We're trying to understand it. If his hair is tightly curled, Afro hair, but his complexion is abyad. And what then is the meaning of abyad? Okay, we're saying Mu'adh bin Jabal, rahimahullah ta'ala. Unless you want to go there, maybe, but it's never been said. If you're going to say no, oh no, well, he was an albino. If you want to go there, and then you can go there if you want, and well, otherwise, maybe you should understand abyad within the context, mashallah ta'ala, of its people. I mean, this lughat al-Arab, language of Arab. And the Fakir, once we were inside of the Shanqit, inside of Mauritania, we're in Mauritania, in the desert here in Mauritania, and we were inside of one of the souks, inside of a place called Kifa, in a place called Kifa, inside one of the marketplaces, trying to buy stuff to build tents and that inside of the desert. And so the Fakir there, I had a personal experience. We're there with a woman, negotiate with a woman, a Mauritanian woman, Shanqitiya, about buying some cloth for the tent. And so the woman there, she's looking at the Fakir, and maybe she can hear a bit of twang in the accent, although I don't know what it was. But she becomes preoccupied with, quote unquote, where I'm from. I mean, hey, Nancy, where are you from? So the Fakir, the Fakir said, Britannia. I know where she's trying to get up, but she's like, Britannia. I say, Britannia. She says to the Fakir, Nigeria? She's Nigeria. And she was right, Allah, maybe she had a bit of basira, innit? But the Fakir say, nah, I didn't say Nigeria. And the Qutu, Britannia. I said, Britain. She's looking at me. She goes, Nigeria? I gotta say that again. I said, La, Britannia. And she keeps on saying, Nigeria? I gotta keep saying, Shuf, I'm saying Britannia. And the Fakir don't know what's coming next. How can they wait? She goes to the Fakir, Walakin anta aswad. She says, but you're black. So how could you be from Britain? You're black. Anta aswad. So the Fakir's response to her was, وَكَذَلِكَ أَنْتِ. You look pretty black to me, likewise, girl. I said, you're black also. She goes, what? No. She goes, no. She goes, heck of it. Ana Baydani. Abiyad. She goes, Ana Baydani. I'm like, what planet are we on here? I'm like, what planet? She goes, Ana Baydani. I said, la. Auntie Sauda, you're black. She goes, la. Ana Baydani. She's getting vexed now. I'm Baydani. Ana Abiyad, she's saying. Sure. And again, it's in between. Now you're Sauda, Ana Baydani. And you're Sauda, Ana Baydani. Sure. Allah Ta'ala bless our dear and beloved there. Sheikh Yahya wrote us, who was there in the souk with the faqih. So he's walking past. So I want to give an example to her. I said, Huwa Baydan, Huwa Abyad. That Abyad there, when you look at him. She goes, La. She goes, no, Huwa Nasrani. He's a Christian. That's what he said. Now he's a Christian. In terms of the definition of terms. That's Allah salam and afiyah. But then it struck an example. What he's saying by Baydani, I'm of a fair complexion of my people. You get the point? It's contextual. I'm fair within the context of the complexion of my people. And that's how you understand it with the Rasul. So that's the only way you can join between the Rasul being Asmar and Abyad. The only other way you're going to say Hadith Sahihah. Remember, it's saying Anas who tells you the Rasul's Abyad. It's saying Anas who tells you the Rasul's Asmar. You're going to say in the tradition here, but from Anas, saying Humayd here, Humayd and Anas, Humayd in Farad. He's the only one, Humayd is the only one who relates from saying Anas that the attribution of the word Asmar. Is Humayd, mashallah ta'ala, with a lot of khiyar tabi'een, rahimahullah ta'ala. So you ain't going to have a problem with Humayd. Your problem there is how do we reconcile between Asmar and Abyad of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Remember, Asmar is crystal clear as a term. Abyad is the one that's not crystal clear. And so the only way you understand Abyad is in the context of his people. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And as we said, the context of the people of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which is a discussion that many don't have, is clear. That term that they negate from the Rasul saying Anas, and to be Adam, he's not Adam alone. Uduma sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That term is the calling of his people, That's the calling of the Sahaba. Are you sure if you can go through them all? You can go through Umar, you can go through Uthman, you can go through Ali, you can go through Abdullah Mas'ud. Keep going, The attribution of Uduma is the overwhelming attribution of the complexion of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. So his fairness is in that context. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. I mean, to the point we have Imams, rahimahullah, that now this hadith da'if. No, we don't even want to accept this hadith. He's like, well, on what basis, You don't want to accept it. Just because of that one term, Asmar alone, you want to throw out the tradition. You can't throw out the sanad. But now a failure to understand what is Asmar as it relates to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The explanation, the faqih took ma'al jalal, from some of the shuyukh, or what it means by Asmar alone of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is when the Rasul exposes himself to the sun. So like he gets sunburnt, he gets darker inside of the sun. That's what he said what Asmar alone is. He says, sure. And the sun doesn't make him cast a shadow. How is it going to affect the complexion of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? And we have to have consistency of understanding. And for the life of me, Allah Ta'ala alam, what the problem there? We don't care what complexion the Prophet says. That's important. Allah obviously does. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he made him a specific complexion, the most perfect of all complexion. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But we, mashallah, the perfection of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if he was green. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, isn't it? So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq, asbir Allah, إذا مشى يتكفى. And when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam walked, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, يتكفى. And here, very difficult to capture, but beautifully here, he would walk swiftly with vigor, lean forward slightly, and also incline from right to left. It captures many of those meanings of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And when the Prophet ﷺ walked, as we'll see, al-Tirmidhi will have an entire chapter upon the walk of the Prophet ﷺ, that the Prophet ﷺ, he moved. As saying Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu, wardaha beautifully, it's as if the earth, it's as if when he walks, the earth is being rolled up for the Prophet ﷺ, and it was rolled up for the Rasul, as he himself, ﷺ, the earth was rolled up for me. He says, ﷺ, a kinaya, metaphor for the swiftness of his movement. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But also two things we get also in the walk of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There's an incline forward sallallahu alayhi wa sallam when he walks. That's part of what his swiftness, captures his swiftness. But also the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as he walks, there's a sway from right to left, very slight sway of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam when he walks. All of that is captured inside of what? Inside of the word yatakaffa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Remember, often a person, the reality of a person, the khalq of a person, the khuluq of a person is captured, quote unquote, just in the way they walk. Even we find it inside of Tib Nabawi, prophetic medicine. They can look at a person walk and they can tell Sihha wa Saqam. They can tell the health and the sickness, what type of sickness is in a person, just by the way a person walks. They can tell the temperament of a person, sanguine, choleric, melancholic, just by a person quote walks. Yeah. All of it is in Surah Al-Furqan, where Allah says, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ. Who are the ibad of ar-Rahman? What's the first sifat of the ibad ar-Rahman? Allah Ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ. Those who walk. It's in the walk. يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ حَوْنًا. They walk upon the earth hawn. What is hawn? Hawn is the walk of the Nabi. That's what we see in Shama'il sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. كَانَ يَمْشِي حَوْنًا. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam captures the actual walk of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That beautiful term, often translated as in all humility. وبه إليه قال حدثنا محمد بن بشار عن العبدي حدثنا محمد بن جعفر حدثنا شعبة عن أبي إسحاق قال سمعت البراء بن عازب رضي الله تعالى عنه وأرضاه يقول كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رجلا مربوعا بعيد ما بين المنكبين عظيم الجمة إلى شحمة أذنيه عليه حلة حمراء ما رأيت شيئا قط أحسن منه رضي الله تعالى عنه وأرضاه. This is saying Bara ibn Azib, yani rahimahullah ta'ala, once again, one of the youngsters of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, Madani, like saying Anas, radiallahu ta'ala anhum wa from the Ansar. He says, radiallahu anhu wa that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was a man of medium stature, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. أكاد تتمي رجلا مربوعا. Okay, rajulan, he was a man, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, with all the definitions of manhood and masculinity that the Prophet perfected, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And it's that we have to understand, because often the Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, they say it's not befitting that a companion addresses the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as a man, so that he's a man, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But unless they mean by that rujuliya in terms of maqam, in terms of the station of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the perfection of all of the attributes of rujuliya. And rujuliya, manhood in this sense, it's not from the divide or the dichotomy of gender. We don't mean manhood vis-a-vis womanhood. Okay, but manhood, yani, ra, jim, lam in the Arabic language is istiqama. It's about uprightness. Hakadara means. That's why we get the same term in the Arabic language, rijal, legs. That's why we get the other interpretation here, rajul, rajil, the hair. Now the process of straightening out the hair, which is part of the grooming of the hair of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And so rajulan, you want that? The maqam of rujuliya, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There's no definition to manhood in the aforementioned definition unless it roots itself back to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Marbu', remember that term, remember, like Aisha, radhiallahu anha wardaha, in a biography, and Aisha says, Kana Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam rajulan. The Prophet was a man, Aisha says, radhiallahu anha wardaha. But they also say about Aisha, Kanat rajulan, Aisha was a man, radhiallahu ta'ala anha. Obviously, what they mean by that, in terms of maqam, in terms of istiqama, radhiallahu ta'ala anha wardaha, in terms of fuqb al-ra'i, the penetrating mind of Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha wardah, all of the sifat of rujuliya, to the point that Aisha radiallahu anha wardah, taqud al-jaysh, yani, she's general of armies, yani. And inside of those armies was khair al-rijal, was the best of men, khair al-furasan, the best of knights and of warriors, were inside of the army of Aisha, where she stood as the general, radiallahu anha wardah, and the day of the red camel. And whose camel was that? Aisha, the camel of Aisha herself, radiallahu ta'ala anha wardah. The second, rajulan, some say, well, what you want from rajulan is the hair of the Rasul, the grooming of his hair. That's what we call rajul, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Because remember the process, as we'll get to, when the Rasul grooms his hair, whose hair is curly, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he picking his hair, drowsing his hair in oil, beginning to groom his hair, that the end process of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to kassur, that you see the hair of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wavy, the waves that are inside of the hair of the Prophet, that's the end process. It doesn't begin like that. That's how it ends. The hair of the Prophet. That process is rajul, it's tarjil, because it's like a straightening out of the hair of the Prophet. That's why rajul. Kana rajulan marbu'an. And so rajul, kind of the meaning of the maqam, the station of the Prophet ﷺ, in terms of perfection of rujuliyah, of masculinity, manhood, whatever term you want in terms of the spiritual maqam, but also kana rajulan, and his hair is always well groomed. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, marbu', as we've described, in terms of his height, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, ba'id bayn al-mankibayn, that the Prophet is ba'id bayn al-mankibayn, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam broad-shouldered, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Somebody trying to capture the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam physically, everything about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam big. So if you try to capture the Rasul, you're capturing a big man, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, head big, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, dakham al-ras, forehead big, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, broad shouldered, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, karadith, the joints of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam big. Everything about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam big, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, like the broadness of chest, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That's literal and metaphor. Okay, yani si'at al-sadr. That's literal, and not only broad physically, but he's broad spiritually of chest, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Of the Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, they say like the chest of the human being is the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that's true to the human being in general, what about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam? Hakada, his arsh. Jalla jalaluhu wa ta'ala azamatu. Ya azim al-jumma ila shahmati udhunay. Now describing the hair of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he had a full head of hair that would reach his blessed earlobes. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Here, the term jumma, and when we get to it, that the hair of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we could describe the hair of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in terms of its length, the length of his hair, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But we could also describe the hair of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with regards to the number of hairs upon his blessed head, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Okay, and the word jumma can be appropriated in both regards. Okay, here what you more so want is that jumma here is about the number of hairs upon his blessed head. That's what beautifully translated here, that he had a full head of hair, jumma, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, full head. And Muhammad Abdul Hayy al-Katani, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said the number of hairs upon the head of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam equate to the number of prophets. Yeah. Every prophet, a single strand of hair upon the blessed head of the Rasul al-Katani, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he makes mention of radiallahu anhu wa. How many prophets? 124,000. How many prophets? 224,000. How many prophets? Allah Ta'ala knows the number of prophets. Not a lot of hair that the Prophet ﷺ has. And it's never been reported a single lock, strand of hair of the Rasul ﷺ fell out. Never been reported, ﷺ fell out. It only comes out upon his command. Sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa sallam, and then his generosity is evident as he now distributes it amongst his companions, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as in the hadith inside of the Sahih Imam Muslim. And so here, Jumma is about the amount, the fullness of his hair, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa illa, otherwise it can be used, as you'll see it used later, for the length of his hair. And the Prophet is going to have three lengths of hair, three lengths. He has what's called wafra, he has what's called limma, and he has what's called Jumma here. And the wafra is when the hair of the Rasul is only to its natural back hairline. When it's at its natural back hairline, that's what you call wafra. If the Rasul shaves his entire head, وسلم, and then now you can see the natural back hairline of the Rasul, and that's as far as it goes. We call that here wafra in the science of Shama'il. Okay, the opposite of that is this term, jumma. And so jumma is when the hair of the Rasul now, yadrib al-mankibay, is now it bounces off his shoulders, so it's shoulder length hair, and that's ordinarily the hair length of the Prophet ﷺ. The third length is called limma bainahuma. Limma is between his natural back hairline and his shoulder. That's what we call limma. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And with those terms here, he used the word jumma, yani azimul jumma. So now jumma, you would think, oh, his hair is now to his shoulders. That's what jumma means, to his shoulders. But now, Sayyidina Anas, ila shahmati udhunay. Ila shahmati udhunay, to your earlobes. And the earlobes of the Rasul don't reach his shoulder. So the earlobes, ordinarily in terms of perfection of symmetry of form, is with the back hairline. So he's using jumma not as length, but jumma in terms of the profundity of the amount of hair that the Prophet ﷺ has. Again, that's a subtlety you have to see inside the tradition here in Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Azim al-jumma ila shahmati udhunay. Alayhi hullat al-hamra. upon the Prophet sallallahu again, there'll be chapters upon the hairs of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Many of them. Imam Tirmidhi is going to bring several chapters upon the hair of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Upon him, Sayyidina Bara is saying, I saw him in a hullat al-hamra. He was wearing 2 red garments. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-hulla is what we call maybe a suit in Arabic language, and in English, a suit. It's top, bottom, that match. So you call that hulla in the Arabic language, okay? It's one of the sort of best, quote-unquote, garments in sort of the ancient world. And again, that sort of overflows to a suit. And again, it's no wonder that the suit is the origin of the suit, even Western suit, is from the Muslim world in and of itself, the suit. So the Rasul is wearing a hulla. The hulla is a rida, same garment that's worn on the top part, and that same piece of cloth now is worn as an izar. So they match in top and bottom. Okay? Hakad the Rasul wearing. And then second, hamra. What do you mean hamra? Meaning it has red pinstripes in it. Not that it's red, khalis. It's not that it's absolutely red. That day in the hadith of Sahih Muslim, that libas ahl nar, at the clothes of the people of hellfire. The Rasul is not going to wear red khalis. Red meaning full red. That day, no one should wear full red. Like Liverpool and Man United, they shouldn't be wearing no full red. Although maybe they said they break it with a bit of white. Maybe Allah Ta'ala. But shuf the Rasul, the hulla, al-hamra, is quote unquote, is red pinstripes. Ma ra'aytu shay'an qat ahsana minhu. Simple. I've never seen anything more beautiful than it. Okay? More beautiful than it. That also, ma ra'aytu shay'an qat ahsanu minhu. That also can relate also to the garment in and of itself. Anything that the Prophet ﷺ, mashallah ta'ala, wears is what? Is it the perfection of beauty, regardless of how you see it, inshallah ta'ala. The third tradition, or the fourth tradition he brings, حدثنا محمود بن غيلان قال حدثنا وكيع حدثنا سفيان عن أبي إسحاق عن البراء بن عازب رضي الله تعالى عنه قال ما رأيت من ذي لمة في حلة حمراء أحسن من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم له شعر يضرب منكبيه بعيد ما بين المنكبين لم يكن بالقصير ولا بالطويل. The tradition again, it affirms a lot of the aforementioned. This again on the authority of Sayyidina al-Bara ibn Azib radiallahu anhu warda. I've never seen anyone whose hair reached between his earlobes and his shoulder. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How can I mean? Yani ma ra'aytu min dhi limma. We said the limma is between the natural hairline, limma here, and the shoulders. So it describes the length of the hair. But also limma in the Arabic language, lemma, istaqarra makana. Istaqarra makana means that the hair of the Rasul is rooted, yani. And somebody rooted, yani. And the Prophet's hair, as we said, doesn't fall out. He has strong hair. He has thick, strong, long hair, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallama, dhi limma. I've never seen anybody, dhi limma, fi hullat al-hamra. I remember whenever they talk about the hair of the Rasul being wafra, the natural hairline, or the Rasul being limma, it's going down. That day is after the Rasul has shaved his head. Okay, I remember the Rasul does not, remember the hair of the Prophet is special yet. And the hair of our Prophet is the most special. Asrar, secrets, lie inside the hair of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's one of the clear secrets in terms of prophetic legacy that remain to the day in which we find ourselves in. It's the hair of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that remains amongst us. And from his khalq, from the physical form of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Imagine, capture that. Many of us haven't thought about that yet. That the physical form of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in form of his hair is still amongst us. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. But the hair of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is only gifted by his generosity, because the Rasul doesn't cut his hair. Cut. Except in nusuk, except when he worships Allah Ta'ala, and that there at mashallah Ta'ala at Umrah and Hajj. That's why, the Imams, probably the most extreme upon them are the school of the Malikiyyah, the likes of Qadi Iyad, considered the most greatest to write inside the science of Shama'il, inside of Shifa. He said it's haram for a man to cut his hair. Haram. Hakad al-hukm of Qadi Iyad rahimahullah ta'ala. Why? Because the Rasul never cut his hair. Well, how are you going to get that? Illa fi nusuk. The only time you can cut it is in nusuk, when you're at the haram of Makkah al-Mukarramah there at Marwa, inshallah ta'ala, shaving your head as an act of worship of Allah ta'ala for that holy sanctuary. The most beautiful thing, Allah beautiful, is that is Imam al-Jazuli, Dala'il al-Khairat, Muhammad al-Jazuli rahimahullah ta'ala. Al-Jazuli rahimahullah ta'ala, what does he say? He says that if a man cuts his hair, shaves his hair, and he believes that he's doing a good act by doing that, cut your shave your hair. Jazuli, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said it's wajib upon the Imam, the Khalifa, to raise an army to declare war against them. He's taking that seriously. Sure, if you there in the barber shaving your hair, you look out the window, I see a whole army gathered on horseback, swords drawn, out of those archers already, just because you now shave your hair inside of the barbers. Sure, that kind of Jazuli, al-Khairat, rahimahullah ta'ala said, MashaAllah, isn't it? They see that which we do not see, isn't it? Radiyallahu ta'ala anhum wa ardahum. وهكذا the hair of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. I've never seen anybody and whose hair reached between his earlobes and shoulders whilst wearing two red garments, as described, more beautiful than the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. That the Prophet had some hair that reached down to his blessed shoulders, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. That there is Jumma. That's what we mean by Jumma, because he's speaking of the length of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's hair. له شعر يضرب منكبيه بعيد ما بين المنكبين. His blessed shoulders were broad, distance between the two shoulders, the two shoulder blades of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. لم يكن بالقصير ولا بالطويل. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi was neither short nor tall, sallallahu alaihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop there. If anyone has any questions, inshallah ta'ala, any questions, inshallah ta'ala. Say again, sorry. And Allah Ta'ala, how long the hair of the Prophet was when he was 16, but we know that the Rasul always carried long hair. Yeah, so he would always carry long hair. So if you want to make an assumption there, whether it's sound or not sound, to make an assumption that his hair is at shoulder length, it's important. That's the order of his day, and the order of the day of the Prophet, like they have long hair. Don't think like the long hair, like men carry long hair, mashallah ta'ala. Women obviously carry long hair. That's the order of the day. The Prophet when we get to the chapter of the hair of the Prophet we can see how he would quote what style that hair. And would he have a center part? Would he not have a center part? Would he braid his hair? When we get to the chapters, that will be clarified. But in terms of the length, what we know about the Rasul that he always has shoulder length hair. But because it's not necessarily clear in terms of description, in terms of the age of Jahiliyyah, then it would be an assumption, but it would be a good assumption for somebody to hold that. Well, Wallahu a'lam, what's special about the age 16? That's what I'd ask you. Why age 16? Why not 15 or 14? Because Allahu a'lam, when we look at the Prophet Allahu ta'ala a'lam, if we have a tradition of the Prophet at 16 years of age, so when we look in terms of the seerah of the Rasul and the ages in which we have greater clarification upon the reality of the Prophet and Allah maybe there could be of a tradition of the Prophet being 16 years of age and this happened, or it was described as such. Okay, so that's more so from you, sis. Sweet 16 and all that business. Now, again. So the queen of the fuqaha, then what does it mean? What does it mean in your lexicon of jurisprudence then? If the Rasul will tell us. Okay, so he asked the question. Allah Ta'ala, but for us, lovers of the Rasul, and how can we want to, when the Prophet said Deen Yusr, we get the point. In fiqh, yeah, you're right. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's wajib if the Prophet did it, or that it's haram if the Prophet didn't do it. Obviously, the actions of the Rasul are more complex than that, and they clarify the actual spectrum of law. Yeah, we also don't understand that. But what we're saying is that Qadi Iyad is at the highest level of jurisprudence. Muhammad Razuli at the highest level. These are imams of jurisprudence, rahimahullah ta'ala, and it's clearly what they extrapolated from this. And from that, radiallahu ta'ala anhu wardahum, they, from a perspective, they were, how can you say, they were blindsided by the Prophet and some other companions. If we look at the Shafi'i fuqaha, they're not going to say that it's haram for a man to cut their hair in other than nusuk. Why are they going to say that? Because we had companions in the presence of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's the wedge, who did cut their hair. And so whatever companion does in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, okay, did in the presence of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Rasul man ankar, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam doesn't rebuke them for doing that, then that can also be an adoptive sunnah. That's called a sunnah taqririyah. That's how the Shafi'i fuqaha would say it. Okay, but you say, well, why did of the Maliki like Qadi Iyad disagree with that and say no, it's haram to cut their hair? Because what he can say is, well, those Sahaba who cut their hair, that's the khususiyah. That is for them and for them alone. So you give us an example. Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu hawajhu. Sayyidina Ali, khalas, you to shave his entire hair. Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu hawajhu. So now he was asked, why do you shave your hair? The first question, why are they asking him? If it was okay and nobody's going to get the point, raise an objection, why would you even ask Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, why does he shave his hair? Because what you understand about, it's not normal for them to shave their hair outside of nusuk. Then Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhu's answer, because the Prophet ﷺ said, tahta kulli sha'ratin dhanb, beneath every single strand of hair is a sin. So Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib had a maf'um, he had an understanding of why he would shave his hair outside of nusuk. And so now Qadi Iyad, Jazuli, and others, they can say, but that day for Sayyidina Ali. And he has a clear explanation, and he stands Yawm al-Qiyamah Amam Allah Ta'ala with that explanation. But when you look at the companions, Jul around the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and if you're going to imitate the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a smile, you show a cave about the hair, isn't it? The hair of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why, subhanallah, in the tradition of whom Sayyidina Abdullah al-Haddad, rahimahullah, Imam al-Haddad, that he did every single sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam except hair. I couldn't mention it, except hair. Every sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu he lived and he implemented. Say not Imam al-Haddad, rahimahullah ta'ala, except hair. But on his deathbed of his miracles, that his hair grew long. The last thing Imam al-Haddad, miraculous upon his deathbed, that his hair grew long, that he met Allah Ta'ala with every single sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And maybe for some, like the best was left the last, isn't it? Once again, captured inside of the hair of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Anyone have any questions? Do you have any questions? He said, what's that? No. Yeah, but what do you mean by that? No, what we're saying is that there are three lengths of the hair of the Rasul. When you say ila shahmatu udhunay, to the earlobes, see the earlobes, they should be accordingly with proper symmetry of form. As the Rasul had, it's in accordance to your back hairline. Your back hairline, that back hairline. When you shave your hair, where does your hair sit? That's like important for fiqh. Like the Shafi'i fuqaha are going to make a mention. Shafi'i fuqaha in wudu, it's wajib for you just to wipe a strand of hair or part of a strand. You understand? That's Shafi'i, not like use Hanafi, 1/3, 1/4. And the Shafi'i it's like there's a strand there, one strand or just part of a strand. But if you're going for part of a strand, that part of the strand must sit inside of your natural hairline. You with it? So if you had long hair and you wipe the hair, nah, let you see that's not sound there. You have to wipe it up here because it must sit inside of the natural hair. That's what we're speaking about, this natural hairline, boundaries of your hair naturally. So the back here is in accordance to the actual earlobes. You understand? So that's a hair length of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A hair length of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is when the Rasul has shaved his head, and his hair is now beginning to grow back. Then when it grows a bit further without touching his shoulders, you call that limma. But when it grows to its length, okay, that's what you call jumma. And we don't know the hair of the Rasul growing beyond that, such that it has to be cut, to be maintained at that length. Like that is the natural hair length of the Prophet ﷺ, and without excess. Is it clear? Well, not slightly, it touches, it touches the shoulder. That's jumma, yeah. Go on. Yeah, go on. And wafra? MashaAllah. There we go. Someone's attentive. MashaAllah ta'ala. Any questions, inshallah ta'ala? Any questions? Right. Huh? Is the expression so, naam. So, so is beauty subjective or is it objective? It's the same question you could ask: is truth subjective or objective? Is it not? You with it? Yeah. Beauty is in the eye of beholder. Then the question is: the beholder small b or the beholder capital B? You understand? So beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and the beholder is God. Who al-Basir? He's the beholder, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there is an absolute standard for truth. Okay? And you can differentiate between truth and validity. And if validity can be in the eyes of the beholder, small b. But in terms of absoluteness, there's an absolute standard for beauty. Okay? But often human beings are programmed to recognize. How can we say? Like in the Arabic language, the term Hasan al-Jism and Hasun in the Arabic language, Hasun, the Arabic language, it's on a form which is Dammu Dammin, Fa'ula Yaf'ulu. In the Arabic language, it means innate, fixed. In the Arabic, the word Hasan is not Husn, beauty is not something you can attain. It's fixed. You're born that way. And in that you're born that way, that's not an issue of objectivity. You get the point? It's not we say subjectivity is relative to the person who gazes upon. I deem him to be beautiful. Another person who I don't deem him to be beautiful. I deem her to be beautiful. Another person who I don't deem her to be beautiful. It's not that, yeah. This is something innate, fixed, yeah. Okay, that's just in the language of the Arabs. Look at him in the language. Yeah, well. You said this is also a station within the life. Shaykh, how do we achieve a portion of the station that they fit our own level? Yeah, no doubt these are stations of wilaya, but remember the wali, khalas, of the awliya in khidmah to the Rasul saying Anas rahimahullah ta'ala. It's like when you hear the Imams rahimahullah ta'ala say there will be people raised Yawm al-Qiyamah in the ranks of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and it's Siddiqiyah. Or there will be people raised Yawm al-Qiyamah in the ranks of Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi, Rutbat al-Salmaniyah. You understand? That the Sahaba, Ashabik al-Najum, my companions are like stars, anyone that you take as a guide, you be guided right by them. They're archetypal in terms of ranks. And the most important of the ranks that they are archetypal in terms of are the ranks of wilaya. So there's not going to be a single person who manifests khidmah such that they call the khadim within the realm of Nabuwa, of Muhammadiyya, say that their archetype is saying Anas ibn Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. I'm going to be raised as a khadim of the Nabi, so I say marhaba. Or you're in the ranks of the khadim who's saying Anas. He's the one who says stawu, staqimu, straighten the rows. Everyone line up straight, shoulder to shoulder. You're in my ranks now. That's saying Anas rahimahullah ta'ala. And in that day, that's saving the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam achieved. Because somebody's focus is upon the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that their whole reality is about the best interests of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواء تبعا لما جئت به, as in Tirmidhi. None of you believe until your hawa, your desires in accordance with what I have brought. That's saying Anas, down to the things that he eats. He has to make sure it concurs with the desire of the Prophet. That Anas, that the khidmah. It's like when you delve, you immerse yourself in the reality of the Prophet as a means of saving the Rasul. The most profound, Allahu A'lam, the most profound praises you could ever hear for saying Anas radiallahu anhu and wardahu is when the Prophet passes away. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhu now agreed to bury the Prophet. Sure. And at that point, whose voice is the loudest? Sayyidina Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. And Sayyidina Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, when she calls out, "Yeah, Anas, are you going to allow them to do this?" When the very person who's doing it is her husband, Sayyidina Ali. But she doesn't call out to say, "Yeah, Ali, yeah, Anas." Sayyidina Fatima calls out to say, yeah, Anas, are you going to stand in and allow them to do this? That there is praise beyond praise for the maqam of Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik rahimahullah ta'ala as the khadim of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Just like mashallah ta'ala, we want, Ya Rasulullah, aina ajiduk, yawm al-qiyamah, oh messenger, where do I find you? O messenger of God, Ya Anas, aina ajiduk. You know, because often, maybe due to our own taqsir, we don't get to the Nabi. And Anas easier access, isn't it? And the same people, look, I can't get to the Prophet ﷺ, but I can get to Anas. You get to Anas, don't worry, you get into the Nabi. You know, same people there, they can't visit the Prophet ﷺ, Medina, whatever reason, they can't reach Medina and visit the Nabi ﷺ. Or Shuf, they say, you visit Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, you visit the Nabi, isn't it? If I get to Abu Ayyub, rahimahullah ta'ala, Khalid ibn Zayd, I'm also getting to whom? To the Prophet ﷺ. You're there? I can khidmah. Saying Anas rahimahullah ta'ala. ينبغي يعني. Any questions? Last question there.
So many people have seen the Prophet in dreams. Can't they clarify what the complexion was like? What was his complexion like? Or other things that may be unclear about it?
Say again, sir.
So many people have seen the Prophet in dreams. Can't they clarify what his complexion?
We say can't. Okay. Yeah, so we get to the last chapter of al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala. So many people have seen the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the dream state. And if they were quote unquote, they had the capacity for artist impression, yani. And if you ask the people who have seen the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, draw the one who you've seen. Sure. What do you reckon? Everyone's going to draw the exact same reality. Now that there from a perspective is not necessarily wrong in the literal sense, because a reality of the Prophet ﷺ is the Rasul ﷺ, not just malakutiyya, he's beyond malakutiyya. And what we mean malakutiyya, that the Rasul ﷺ, his reality, the formal reality of the Prophet ﷺ, is not a fixed module, it's not fixed. You get the point? The same eyes can be seen the Prophet ﷺ haqqan, in reality, in different ways. Okay? That they one. Then the second thing, which if you bring it down a level, then the Imams rahimahullah ta'ala are odds. That somebody who sees in the Prophet that whoever sees me in the dream state has seen me. Okay, what then does that mean? Okay, of the Imams rahimahullah ta'ala, that you have to see the Prophet literally as is described bima'na wa mafhuma, in the proper understanding and meaning of it inside of Shama'il. You have to. If we take their opinion, that opinion, 99.99999 recurring have not seen the Prophet. If you took that opinion, and that is opinion, you can't discount that opinion. And many great Imams have that opinion that you must see the Rasul literally as he's described inside of mashallah, the works of the Imams rahimahullah upon the eyes of the Sahaba. But the Imams rahimahullah also embrace the opinion. Because remember, the dream world is highly symbolic. And remember, the dream world, the world of the Amr, Ruh, the world of the Barzakh, Ruh, spirit, with the Ruh, yatajassad, yatamathal. You get the point? The Ruh transmutes into forms. And you got the point? And so the point is now, it's upon the belief of the Ra'i, the one who sees the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, visit the Rasul, mahma, regardless of what the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam looks like. And so now when somebody sees the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam inside of the dream state, like we know people have seen the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he quote unquote paste white, jet white, abyad al-amhaq. How many dreams of people have seen the Rasul and he's abyad al-amhaq in terms of loan? Is it the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And go to the Imams, it is, because his soul now yatajassad in that form. But then you say, well, abyad al-amhaq is not the perfection of complexion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there's some type of nuqsan, there's some type of deficiency. The deficiency is in the ra'i, not in the mar'i. So the deficiency, al-aibu fil aini la fi najmi fi sighari. So the fault is in the eye, not in the smallness of the star. It's in the dreamer. The Rasul is showing you that there's a deficiency in the one who's dreaming, not in the one who's being dreamt about, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And so how can we understand that? And so the answer there, the only way somebody who's dreamt of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, can't he tell you the loan of the Nabi? A question there is if we take the tradition of a man who's in the haram, there, and he comes unto whom? They say Abdullah bin Abbas and Abdullah bin Umar. The hadith, they bring the tradition, and Nabahani, they bring the tradition, where what he said, I saw the Prophet in a dream last night. Tabi'i, he hadn't seen the Rasul. I saw the Prophet in a dream last night. Okay, sure. So they say, Sifhu. Look, now they say, describe the one who you saw. Look, now you got the Sahaba who saw the Nabi. Both of them children. Abdullah bin Abbas, Abdullah bin Umar. Describe the one who you saw. So he begins to describe the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he brings, what does he describe the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like the second people of Humayd and Anas, Asmar, Adam, Akadam uses when he describes the complexion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so thereby Abdullah bin Umar, Abdullah bin Abbas said, had you seen him, there was no more perfect description of the Rasul. But your dream was bang on. That was a Nabi upon everybody's definition that you saw. But look at the complexion inside of the dream of the Tabi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, when he describes the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Tawfiq, that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. Al-Muhim, that we see him. Yeah, Al-Muhim, even if you don't see him, you feel like you see him. Innit? Like even if the 99.99% who in the dream they thought they saw the Nabi, and it wasn't the Nabi, according to the vast majority, it wasn't the Nabi, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whatever. At least I felt it like it was the Nabi, isn't it? And that feeling's enough, isn't it? It's like inside of Ramadan, the Shafi'i fuqaha, somebody who's thiqah, somebody who's trustworthy and upright. He says, look, there's a new moon. He sees the new moon. Khalas, everybody fast. The Shafi'i fuqaha said, as long as he's upright, if he says there's a new moon, even if there's no moon, it's the new moon. Even if there's no moon there, khalas. Raf like another fuqaha of the Shafi'i school, say, isn't it? How come the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Al-Muhim, that we feel like we're seeing him. You get the point? That's what the most important thing is. And then when that, on the basis of that feeling, like you feel like you're seeing the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, isn't it? Like you sure the Nabi was there. And you're always going back to the Nabi being in that corner. So I saw the Nabi, I saw the Nabi, I saw the Nabi, gazing. Yeah, that one day you're gonna look, there the Nabi. He'd be there haqqan, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Isn't it? Could we ask Allah Ta'ala for tawfiq, that Allah Ta'ala makes us, mashallah Ta'ala, the ra'i and the mar'i, that Allah Ta'ala makes us of those who see the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, but really more importantly, that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gazing at us sallallahu alayhi wa sallam from where we perceive not. Asking Allah Ta'ala for tawfiq and nadar. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.